Hello, and welcome to Video Game Archaeology, a new series, or possibly an episode, or I don't really know what this thing is going to be, but who cares? I'm just having a good time. I am a professional, real life working archaeologist who went to school repeatedly to do an incredibly esoteric and frankly weird job. I've been working in archaeology for about half my life. However, I have absolutely no experience in video game development, criticism, or anything else really. I've just been a lover of video games for much more than half my life, and I love to talk about them and think about them. And I think maybe combining these two parts of my life might be kind of fun. So, if you come here, you might be looking at the title and thinking video games and archaeology. So, let me talk about what I mean by that. The first question might be, what is archaeology? The textbook definition of archaeology would be something like understanding past cultures, societies, and human behavior by way of their material remains. So, we're looking to understand humans through the stuff they left behind, namely, most famously would be artifacts and archaeological sites themselves, right? At all scales, big sites, small sites, landscapes, right? It has a lot to do with space and place. So, why is archaeology perhaps an interesting way to think about, an interesting lens to look at video games through? So, archaeological method and theory, two things I'll talk about a lot in this show, are great tools for thinking about space and place. Some video games, like the first subject I'm going to cover, which is Dark Souls, are well loved primarily because they have a fantastic sense of place. So, we're going to dive down into how archaeologists think about the world, how they connect place with culture, and how that might help us understand why a game like Dark Souls or maybe Breath of the Wild or Final Fantasy VII create a wonderful sense of being alive and as a place of being lived in, right? Something you hear a lot about good video games that have a good sense of place. I think archaeology might be uniquely suited for helping us to tackle those sorts of questions. The next thing we'll do is we'll go into our first subject, which is Dark Souls. And we're going to be starting where the game starts with the Undead Asylum. All right, so starting up a new game of Dark Souls Remastered. This is being played on the PlayStation 4. And, this part of the video will probably just be, a little bit like in the Let's Play tradition, very low key, very chill. Occasionally chat about some of the things I see, and then, as you'll see in a minute, as we hit parts of the video that are particularly good places to talk about archaeology, I'll stop and I'll do that in a more in-depth way. So this is my girl Janet. Janet is my FromSoft character. Every FromSoft game I play, my character is named Janet. So this lady's been through, she's been through all the Dark Souls. She's been through Demon Souls. She's been through Bloodborne. I couldn't. Sekiro doesn't let you do that. But anyway, she's cool. She's I usually put a little bit of time into what she looks like, but I'm not going to here because I was just making this video for this, so I don't really know why I spent so much time thinking about what hair color I was going to pick, but there you go. So I was pretty rusty, I'm going to warn you, when I jumped into this. I had not played Dark Souls 1 in a number of years, and so you're going to see I don't think I actually die at any point, but I do get beat up a little bit, embarrassingly. So please forgive me. So this is kind of cool. This is maybe our first opportunity to think a little bit about archaeology in this intro. So of course this intro, iconic intro to Dark Souls 1, introducing us to the sort of lore of this world and this very deep history. So that's kind of an opportunity to think a little bit about the relationship between archaeology and history. So archaeology, one of the things that makes archaeology unique, I think, is that it sits at the kind of crossroads of social sciences, humanities, and the hard sciences or bench sciences, whatever you want to call it. It really draws from all those traditions in really cool ways. So obviously, from the humanities, it's pretty
it's pretty obvious to see how it relates to history, right? We're interested in issues of chronology, of cause and effect, of movements through long periods of time, and a lot of the same things that narrative building, right? A lot of the same things that historians do, archaeologists are interested in. In the social sciences, which is where archaeology sort of finds itself situated primarily, at least in the United States, archaeology is a subfield of anthropology. It's related to sociology and to any of the other social sciences, and it does see itself as a scientific community in the same vein that say sociology is. And at some point, I'll tell you a little bit about the history of archaeological theory. We could talk about the processual positivist scientific turn of the 1960s in archaeology, and the pushback against that began in the 1980s, along with the post-structural, postmodern movements throughout science. But that's a little, we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. For now, know that archaeology is drawing from both of those, and then certainly the bench sciences. Geology and chemistry and physics all play a big role in archaeology. How we actually excavate sites is very much related to both geology and geography. The way that we do chronometric dating, radiocarbon dating, or potassium-argon dating, right, heavily drawn from things like physics and chemistry. Certainly we are interested in issues of biology, human evolution, the animals and plants and ecology that people interacted with in the past. So archaeology finds itself sort of situated in this really interesting place. I'm using the kind of the Dark Souls intro here as a way to draw on that connection to history. So archaeology is related to history, tied to history, but it is not history. It's not it used to be called the handmaiden of history in some circles, and it's really not that. It's really a very different way of engaging with the past that does draw heavily from really the whole academy. It's one of the things that makes archaeology so cool. This is an opportunity to think a little bit about that. All right, we're coming up on the end of the intro here. We're actually going to play a little bit.
Yes, indeed. The dark sign brands the undead. And in this land, the undead are corralled and led to the north. Where they are locked away to await the end of the world. This is your fate.
All right, I wanted to hang back for that iconic "yes indeed" segment. I love that part. So I'm prune-faced raisin, just good bud, tossing me a key for some reason attached to a dead body. It's still a mystery to me why he does that, but c'est la vie. So I started in my intro to talk a little bit about why I think archaeology is a cool or unique way to approach to approach this from a new lens, like why this intersection of archaeology and video games. So I also mentioned I'm certainly not the first person to think about archaeology and video games at the same time. There are some examples of archaeologists doing quite literally the archaeology of video games. I mentioned, exploring WoW servers or other ways in which you might explore the digital past the same way archaeologists explore the physical, real world past. And there's also certainly archaeologists who are engaging with our relationship with technology, which is a kind of hot topic in the social sciences right now, right? How the ways in which we are a little bit androidish in our relationship to technology and to the digital world. And not to keep beating on WoW, but that's a cool place to think about it as a place in just MMOs in general. The way people's identities are tied to the digital world, maybe more so even than they are the physical world. So this room coming up here is where I'm going to stop and focus in a little bit and do a little bit more focused talking. So.
So let me use this room here as a little case study for how archaeology might help us to start to think about a particular space. I'll start by clarifying some terms. When I teach about archaeology, I often use the analogy of a three-legged stool to discuss the ways in which archaeologists have to approach every bit of data that we collect. The three legs of the stool are method, which is how we actually collect data, ethics, which is the moral structure which we maintain around our work in order that we don't do harm. All science has this, by the way. And finally, theory. Theory is the way we think about the data. So I'm going to introduce you to a little bit of theory right now in order that we might think about this space. We'll have to recognize before we do that, of course, and I suppose try to ignore the artifice in the room, so to speak. The artifice in the room being that this isn't a real place, but is instead an invented one made by a group of artists. That's not normally an issue in archaeology where we're working in the real world. Or, I mean, maybe it is. I guess any constructed space, any piece of architecture is imagined by somebody, right? So maybe it isn't so different. That's neat. Well, let me start by introducing you to two French sociological theorists who are crushingly important to archaeologists. Did you think this was going to be Archaeology 101, buddy? Sorry, this is Archaeology 401, and you're going to have to come to terms with that. The first of those two French theorists is Pierre Bourdieu. One of Bourdieu's most important works to archaeologists is his 1970 work, The Berber House, or The World Reversed. In that piece, Bourdieu reveals how architecture, that is, the way a house or a building is imagined, constructed, and ultimately experienced, is an incredibly important tool for understanding how a society functions. This piece and all of the works of these two theorists are dense, rich, and beautiful, and I'm going to give them the passingest of glances, which is a real shame. You should look them up. They're on the internet. They're also both dead, which means you don't have to worry about catching up anytime. Anyway, Bourdieu argues in The Berber House that space is intentionally, although often subconsciously, structured to create inclusion and exclusion, insiders and outsiders, familiarity and discomfort. And that by creating these dueling experiences, architecture aids in the creation of a bounded culture to which one can belong or alternatively not belong. Now, I'm looking at this space, and it makes me wonder what Bourdieu would have thought of it. This is not a domestic space, right? I don't know, it's a prison right now. But was it always a prison? I have my suspicions looking at this layout. The areas that I've blued out make me wonder if this wasn't once some sort of public manor or a governmental space or something. This space itself sort of yells gathering hall to me. Would this be a place where outsiders would gather to be judged, accepted, or rejected by the insiders who had access to the more interior spaces? The artifice screams, though, at this point. Did the artist just want to create a good space for a boss battle? Spoilers? I don't think so, actually. I think the From Software designers really do want this place to feel like something with history. And my thoughts are that this place was maybe not always a prison. But it's a prison now. And that brings me to my second French sociological thinker, Michel Foucault. Foucault is hugely influential in the social sciences, and archaeology is no exception. He's also a real interesting guy who led a real interesting life. Google. He wrote a lot about power, and particularly about the power of the state and its use of punishment as a means of enforcing behavior. Archaeologists love him because he thought about this in a particularly materialist and spatial way. His work, Discipline and Punish, references Bentham's panopticon as an ideal metaphor for considering the relationship between the state and the citizen. The panopticon is a perfect prison, one designed in such a way that a single security guard could observe every behavior of every moment of the lives of every prisoner all at once. This space here reminds me of the panopticon that Foucault was referencing. So if I push my theory from earlier further, that perhaps this space was at one time a gathering hall and a public building, but later was adapted to be a prison yard, it perfectly achieves the goals of both those spaces. That's neat. We would thus call this a multi-component site in archaeology, by which I mean that there's time depth here. At one time, it was a public gathering hall. At some point, that function was lost, and a lot of time of inactivity passed. We can guess that by the fact that it has seemingly fallen into ruin at some point. Later, in the lore of the game, this would be after the rise of the Curse of the Dark Sign, it was newly utilized and adapted as a prison. And with this, the perfect panopticon like yard for observing prisoners, even at their moments of freedom. So, yeah, I guess what archaeology does is give us a way to way overthink things like this. Well, whoa! For you all, I'm not going to mess around with trying to fight the Asylum GM with the hilt of a sword. Just took an arrow, very first arrow of the game. Just going to take that right to the side. Like I said, a little bit rusty. It's pretty good rolls. Pretty good rolls. Still got it. I'm noticing that I'm fat rolling, and really don't want to be fat rolling. Some good physics. Quality stuff. This happens to me literally every time. Ready for this? Owned. I don't understand the physics of that ball. I don't know why it goes to the left.
Oh, you.
Alright, so I'm gonna hang out and just let you listen to this dialogue.
I'll die soon, then lose my sanity. I wish to ask something of you. You and I, we're both undead. Hear me out, will you? Regrettably, I have failed in my mission, but perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my family: thou who art undead art chosen, and thine exodus from the Undead Asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land.
Okay, I am gonna interrupt her. I think this speech is hilarious, and I think you should think it's hilarious too. I just love this. This is an old saying in his family. Thine. I just love it. I just love it. I love it. I love that this is what accounts for history in the world of Dark Souls. So, getting back to our thinking about the role of history and how we approach it as archaeologists, maybe we shouldn't give too much credit to the FromSoft designers here and the way they're thinking about history and deep time. But I do just love that. So, but we're just gonna hang out with this for our last couple of minutes here. And we'll watch me. Nod, where am I going? What the? Where am I going? I had to kill this dude. Badly. And then I'm going to realize that, oh, I didn't actually sit at the bonfire, which would be smart. Yeah, okay. Now I'm going to have to fight that dude again. Probably get owned again. I can't remember if I get owned again. We'll find out. Oh, I've learned. Didn't get owned that time. So, I mean, it's kind of cool to check out the architecture of this place and, continue to think about this as a place, right? And some of the things we discussed before about, oh, is this a place that has some time depth to it? Is this a place that's had different functions through time? Is this a place that was once a public space and then, it's now been sort of re-inhabited in this new setting? What's the role of these kind of upper areas where we are now, where we're now on the areas where you might expect to see. Oh, I almost ate it there. This is, we start to see these guys that are more like guards, right? They're sort of soldiers because we're now inside the what Bourdieu would think of, right, as the insider part of the architecture instead of the outsider part. Now we're going to go back and we're going to literally jump back down into the area that's designated for prisoners, where Foucault might discuss them being, being watched all the time in that sort of panopticon way. Ow. Ow. I don't even know what just hit me there. What was that attack that just hit me? I'm not really sure. That's a pretty good roll. Pretty good roll. Two-hand that battle axe. Take him out in like 4 or 5 hits. Get good. So this is just a chance to kind of be in this space a little bit for a few more seconds and think about it. This game really is a masterclass in this creation of space, and the way they've done it, they're not to beat on this, but the way they've done it is by giving it this sense of time depth, right? This is a place it's been here for a long time. This is a place that's been a lot of different things. This is a place that's been experienced by many different places in many different ways, and we're coming to it sort of after the fact. And I think we're going to see this emerge as a theme in many of the spaces in Dark Souls, and frankly its sequels and all of these FromSoft games. It always feels like we're walking into a place just after the action happened, right? Some interesting things have happened here recently. Some interesting things have happened here a long time ago. I'm going to take the time to go hang out with Snuggly for some reason. I don't really know. Again, I guess I just was playing the game and having a good old time and forgot I was recording this for a video. But this is just such a cool place. This asylum. I didn't even get into thinking about that term. Asylum is an interesting choice, right? Thinking about the kinds of prisoners we have here.
Only in the ancient legends it is stated.
And we'll end here with this last cutscene, which rules.
To leave the Undead Asylum in pilgrimage to the land of the ancient lords. Lordran.
Now, of course, here we're going to get this great first sort of inkling of one of the coolest elements of Dark Souls, which is this interconnected world, right? All these places we can see here are real places in the game we'll get to go to, and that continuity of the world is one of the things that makes it have a great sense of place. We can think about that a little bit in future episodes, next time when we come back to this, I think we'll pick up right from here, and we'll talk about the undead burg and the first sort of sections of the game outside of the Undead Asylum. All right, so thanks everybody. This has been Video Game Archaeology, and thanks for coming and hanging out with me for our very first episode.